The Houston Rockets are 16 games into their 2024-2025 NBA season, and this ball club has been nothing short of spectacular. Through those first 16 games, they have earned themselves a record of 11-5. They've also won 8 out of their last 10 ball games. All of this is good enough to land them sitting at 4th place in a very loaded Western Conference. And we look at the few teams that's ahead of the Houston Rockets in the standings as of right now. At number 3, you have the Los Angeles Lakers. In that number 2 spot, you have the Oklahoma City Thunder. Coming in at number 1, you have the Golden State Warriors. And all 3 of these teams, these are teams that have championship aspirations. And the Houston Rockets, they're hanging up at the top of the Western Conference with these guys. They're not too far off at all. We look at the number 1 seed, Golden State Warriors, a record of 11-3, and then there's the Houston Rockets right behind them with a record of 11-5. And we all know in the Western Conference, winning 2 or 3 games, it could change a lot. So I'm just saying this to allude to how great the Houston Rockets have been to start the season. And I know this comes as to no shock to us. We knew the Houston Rockets were going to be good coming into the season. We look back to the previous year, they showed glimpses of how great they could be prior to some of their key players getting injuries that kept them out for extended periods of time. We saw before that happened, the Houston Rockets be a really good ball club and actually be in the Western Conference playoff picture. And then even after experiencing those injuries, they still show us a glimpse of greatness and even almost making a push to the playoffs. So all offseason long, we knew that if the Houston Rockets, if they come into a season with these very talented players at full health, they could cause some real havoc in the Western Conference. And we also said that they could be a top 6 seed in the Western Conference, and it's definitely looking that way to start the season. And I just see more in the Houston Rockets. I think as well as they're playing right now, I think they have the ability within this season to take their play to an even higher level. And I of course have my reasons for saying that, and I think consistency has been a huge thing for the Houston Rockets all season long, and I think they've been consistent in 2 areas, and I think these 2 areas could really transcend them into playing at a higher level. And we look at the biggest constant so far for the Houston Rockets this season. They've been able to dominate 2 of the most important facets in the game of basketball, and that's getting stops, and that's also securing the rebounds when getting those stops. The Houston Rockets have been elite in both of these areas, and I put this in one category because I think defense and rebounding goes hand in hand. But nonetheless, so far this season, the Houston Rockets, they rank number 3 in the NBA when it comes to defensive rating, and when it comes to rebounds, total rebounds and offensive rebounds, they rank number 1 in the NBA. So this is the identity that this young team has taken on, and I honestly love it because they have the personnel for this type of identity. But when all things are failing on the offensive side of the ball, whether it's stagnant possessions, whether jump shots are just not falling, the Houston Rockets, they have made it known that no matter what, their transition game is always going to be going. And their most recent win against who did they just beat? The Indiana Pacers, 30 points off of turnovers. But if they're going to be forcing turnovers, they're going to have their transition game going. They're going to be getting half-court stops, and they're also going to be securing the board. So we know that's what we're going to get for the Houston Rockets each and every night. And those are really 2 great statisticals to be able to dominate and control. So I'm loving that for the Houston Rockets. And then I just think that this team has, and this is going to be the real X factor, but I like that we've seen consistent growth in this area all season long for the Houston Rockets. But I think this team is just bubbling with so much offensive potential, and they just haven't scratched the surface of how great they could be offensively. And that's why I'm so high on the Houston Rockets, because they're not playing nearly as well as I think they're capable of on the offensive side of the ball with the personnel that they have. But here they are with a record of 11-5, fourth place in the Western Conference, and they're still looking really good. But we talk about that growth with the Houston Rockets. They got off to a slow start to start this season, but we're slowly seeing each and every component of their offense come together. And we just look at it statistically. They are growing there statistically too. If you keep an eye on their points per game, they've jumped up to 114, which is good for 12th in the NBA in points per game, and then they're 15th in the league in offensive rating. And the one area that they're really still just struggling in when it comes to the offensive side of the ball is the 3-point shooting, and they're still ranking at the bottom. They rank lower than 25th in both 3-pointers made and 3-point field goal percentage. So that's still that's still an area of struggle for the Houston Rockets. But when I look at this team, I think they have better jump shooters than where they're ranking at when it comes to 3-point shooting. Those shots just haven't started to fall yet. But that's another thing when I say that things are slowly starting to come together for this team offensively. We saw some of the starters get off to a slow start to start the season when it comes to their 3-point shot. Some of the best shooters on the team, actually, guys like Fred VanVleet, Jabari Smith Jr., Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, they've all gotten off to the season shooting the ball slowly as far as their jump shot goes. And we've seen we've seen Jabari Smith Jr. He's starting to pick up his efficiency a lot. He's shooting over 50% in 4 out of his last 5 games. Fred VanVleet, his 3-point shot is starting to fall a lot more. We know what we get from Dillon Brooks. He's a streaky shooter. He's always really hot or really cold. It just depends on how his week is going, how his month is going when it comes to his 3-point shooting. And then also when they get that version of Alperen Sengun that they got against the Indiana Pacers, when he starts to play like that, when he's been a monster on that low block and he forces the defense to crash in, and now we're seeing the Houston Rockets getting all types of open threes, all type of open cuts to the rim. That's another great thing that the Houston Rockets, and I think as the season goes on, Alperen Sengun, he's going to perform a lot better. I had some Turkey basketball fans, they got on my head about my last video. I said Alperen Sengun. I said that I literally said he's been playing really solid, but from what I've seen off his first few years in the NBA, he could definitely be playing at a higher level. But then also, I looked at his numbers, and he is only playing 29 minutes per game, which is that's super low for a player that's as talented as him. So that's something that I gotta take into consideration. That the Houston Rockets, they're playing a big rotation. The guy that's leading the team in minutes is Jalen Green at 32 minutes per game, and he's really been the one starter that hasn't been able to get it going for the Houston Rockets. And I think this is another reason why we should be optimistic for this team. But that's Jalen Green, and I just looked at his game log, and Jalen Green so far in the season, he has had only 2 games where he's shot over 50% from the field, and I think he is so much better than that. And so far in the season, if the season was to end today, he would have career lows on his shooting percentage from the field and his shooting percentage from 3-point land. And I think Jalen Green, I think he is too special, too good of a ball player to be putting up these type of numbers, and I don't think it's gonna last much longer. So like we talked about, the season the Houston Rockets, like we seen the constant defense, constant rebounding. That's been there all season long. They've been able to win games off of that. And then also as the season going on, we start to see this offense starting to come together slowly. We start to see those starters knock down their shots more. They're putting up more points per game. And then I think that last component is just Jalen Green. Jalen Green being a more consistent, a more efficient scorer, because we know when it comes to scoring the basketball and his talent, there's not too many players that's a better talent than him. When we look at his speed with the basketball, his ability to jump, and then his ability to knock down difficult shots with a hand in his face, moving shots, creating his own shots. He has the total package on the offensive side of the ball. And we saw last year, we saw him put it together for 7, 8, 9, 10 games where he looked like the best player in the NBA. So I think once we see Jalen Green tap into that special player that he can be on the offensive side of the ball, I think those offensive numbers are going to climb even more for the Houston Rockets. And I think they're seeing so much positive growth, so many positive things games, like when they play a team that they know they're more talented in, they're dominating those games and they're winning those games. But I think the Houston Rockets, they've been performing great so far this season, but I think things could, the more that they grow on the offensive side of the ball, and we know how much talent is there offensively. The great thing for the Houston Rockets is that they have the small things going for them offensively. They have these role players being effective on the offensive side of the ball. They have all of these guys averaging double digits. So I'm just thinking, if the Houston Rockets, if they can get their two immensely talented offensive players, Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green, these two guys string together some games where they're both having dominant offensive outings, I think that's when we'll see the true form of how great the Houston Rockets can be. And once again, they're playing so spectacular right now. This is going to be a big time season for them, judging off how the last couple of years have been. But I think this team has something great about them. Like we said, with them doing those little things so small, defending and rebounding, that means so much in the game of basketball. And then to go along with that, you have so much offensive potential that's just bubbling within the team. I think if they can start to scratch that, they're gonna be a very scary team to match up with in the playoffs. But you guys let me know what you think down in the comment section. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man. And that's curtains.